All right, we are live. Welcome back, everyone, to AJC and the Web Devs with special weekly edition, Monarch Wadia.
Yay! Thank you for having me on, Anthony.
Yeah, last week we were looking at NPM packages, which was really exciting and fun. We're going to take a slightly different direction today and show off some transcription stuff that I worked on. And Monarch has a new hook, a React hook for Ragged, which is really, really exciting. And then I think we'll do those. And then if we want to talk about Python CLI stuff, we can probably do that after you show off your things. But how you been for the last week?
I've been good. I've been hacking away at Ragged and applying for jobs. It's an interesting place to be. Yeah. So it's been good.
Are you applying at AI companies or just general tech jobs?
You know what? Market's weird. I started with AI companies. Then actually I started with Fang, and Fang is just a bloodbath right now.
I can only imagine.
Then I applied for AI companies, and AI companies are cool, but they're all startups. And I can do startup, but the kinds of startups they're just really tiny. And now I'm kind of trying to find niches in AI. So there's a niche where I don't know if I should be sharing this, but there's like niches where mid-sized companies want to build AI in-house, and there's like innovation groups and stuff. So these are good places for people to find work in AI right now. Everybody's adopting it. So even enterprise, it's possible to find jobs in AI and enterprise now, but it's competitive.
Yeah, no, totally. So I can imagine just building like internal tooling and leveraging AI for company stuff. That's probably huge because you can build it for yourself, you can build it for your customers, you can build it for all sorts of things.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a powerful tool. Some people think it's sentient. Did you hear about Sydney, the Bing chatbot fiasco incident?
Oh yeah, no, I read the entire New York Times transcript. This is I'll drop this in the chat. There was this thing called Sydney, which was when Bing first came out, and Bing used ChatGPT under the hood. I'm not sure how Sydney relates to ChatGPT, if it had anything to do with it or not, but it was basically this journalist interviewed it and was kind of like, hey, imagine you're an evil AI, what would you say? And then it said a bunch of evil AI stuff. People are like, oh my
god. That's slightly different from what I heard. So what I heard was Sydney is some sort of personality that lurks inside Bing. And if you try and ask Bing to go into its own depth psychology, like if you start asking things like, ooh, tell me about your Jungian shadow.
That's what I mean, though. That's what I talk about being and asking it to be an evil AI. The Jungian shadow side is the way you contact that part of his personality. So yeah, I think I agree with you. I heard that same thing too. I think we're saying the same thing here in slightly different words.
I think we're going like, maybe you're prompting it differently and I'm prompting it differently. I got some weird output, I'll tell you that. And I got some really freaky output. I don't know, man. It could be a prompt. It could be like a guerrilla marketing thing. I don't know, but it got me.
Yeah, so the title is A Conversation with Bing's Chatbot Left Me Deeply Unsettled. Yeah, but this is Kevin Roos, well-known tech writer for New York Times.
Oh yeah, I read this one. I read this one too. Yeah.
This is what made it really blow up at the time. And this was, because if you look back when this was February of 2023. So ChatGPT had only been out for like 3 months, super new. People had no idea really what was happening or what was going on. And then an article like this drops for a bunch of people who don't really engage with tech a lot, and they're just like, oh my god, what is this?
That's interesting. So I actually wrote an article that was very similar, but not similar, but touched on the same Jungian themes. Let me pull it up. So
yeah, I love this idea of the of the Jungian collective unconscious, which is this idea there's kind of like this lurking collective thing that we can all tap into, and it's based on like myths and archetypes and a lot of that stuff. And it's a really fascinating idea. And ChatGPT almost like empirically proves it, because it's its own way of tapping into this collective unconscious and archetypes and stuff with like vector concept spaces standing in for archetypes. That is the way I kind of think of it.
Totally. You know what's weird? I wrote this article like 6 days after the Kevin Drews article came out.
Really?
Yeah, and I did not read that article. I was doing my own research.
Because it was in the collective unconscious.
I think it was. It's one of those things where different people invent things at the same time, sort of deal. What did they call it? Co-emergence. So
multiple discovery.
Multiple discovery. There you go.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. There's probably a couple terms for it, but
I dropped the link for you.
Yes, I see it. Gotcha. Medium.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I basically went in. Oh no, wait, I'm sorry. That's the wrong article.
Yeah, I was like, that's a run-in LLMs in the browser.
I'm sorry. Maybe I picked it up just. Okay, this one was in April. My bad. This was April. So, yeah. So
I screen share and show the article on screen.
Oh, sure. I haven't read it in a long time, so it'll be fun going through it and not knowing what we'll find.
Yeah, you don't have to like read the whole thing. I just kind of want to throw it on the screen for people.
I really hope there's nothing offensive in there. Okay.
Oh, I'm sure it's fine. So few people are watching this that you can offend whoever you want. Don't
general
offend me.
Trigger warning. Okay.
How to summon entities. I like that title. That's a really good title.
I tried to make it a little spooky.
I was surprised. I don't think I knew you ever wrote this. This is so cool. I've been telling people about this a lot. This whole collective unconscious Jungian thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just because I'm someone who I came up through the humanities. Like I didn't really get into tech till later. So for me, like this, I know all about this stuff. Like I'm very, very into a lot of these kind of topics. And so I find that there's such a rich crossover between ideas in psychology and the humanities and history that relate to AI in all sorts of weird, fascinating, unexpected ways. And this is a really good example.
That's interesting. Oh, that's interesting because okay, that's sparking like 1,000 different thoughts because what we're doing with AI, I mean, if you think about it, with all the tool use now that AI can use tools and stuff, and it's been able to do that for a while, nothing new. It's like you're letting people program in the English language. And once you have programming, like the languages, if you kind of see how each language is sort of like it's like what do you call it? It's like an isolated island where a certain community works. So Python, for example, it was made by data scientists. Like it was really used a lot by data scientists for the longest time. So Python is really good for data science, and it has all these cool mathematical things like libraries. And it's really easy to use because data scientists, they don't want to mess around with code too much. So Python is really easy to use and really good for math. And then you have, say, C++, which is a little older, so it's good for like driver stuff because that's where C++ grew up, and games were made in C++, and that legacy continues today. So historically, C++ has always been that kind of stuff. And then like Rust is a replacement for C++, so most Rust developers are working on like operating system level stuff, right? So or performance level stuff. So now we're bringing the English language into programming as a programming language itself. It's basically what's happening. So I wonder if the humanities are actually going to be taken more seriously now because of AI.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a tweet about this a long time ago about how the humanities are going to be impacted in a huge way by AI, but actually in a good way, in the sense that people who have humanities degrees and abilities have it got this insane leveling up through ChatGPT because of the fact that they've learned how to express themselves through the English language for complex ideas. And that's what you need to be able to really most effectively communicate with an LLM, at least at this point in time. Things might change later, but right now, the better you can express what you want to do through pure English, the better answer you're going to get.
Yeah. That's true. I can almost imagine like VS Code dictionary plugins where, oh, you have a prompt. Okay, well, you're not going to know all the words in there because some big brain developer just used prevaricate in their prompt. What's prevaricate? I totally see that happening, man. It's so I go into like introductions So GPT-4 language model is a remarkable AI technology that can generate human-like text, blah, blah, blah. So it doesn't have the shadow just by itself, but it has an awareness of archetypes. And like archetypes are really a language space phenomena. So if you think about language, and if you consider language as a type of multidimensional space, then archetypes are really clusters that live inside that space. You know, it's like a city, or I want to use the word personality now. So it's like almost like personalities that are living in language space that you can access.
What's some
And
examples of archetypes you would give for people who don't necessarily know when they hear the word archetype in a Jungian sense? What does it mean?
oh, for sure. So like the magician is a common archetype, where developers are often magician archetypes, where you're basically trying to master your craft, and you're an advisor. You're not necessarily too involved in the world, but you're more involved in your head. Then there's all these different archetypes. You can either take it from, like, there's the persona, there's the typical ones, and then there's the like okay. I think
some are a
I'm
little like too Enneagram for me, but some of
yeah.
the original archetypes I thought were really, really fascinating. So a lot of them were based on like ancient, like just spoken word stories and things like that.
Here's one for Loki as a trickster. So
Hmm.
you seem to be you're probably way better at this than I am, considering you have the humanities background. Do you want to introduce
Yeah, that's
folks
why.
to the archetypes?
Well, that's why I'm just always curious to hear how people understand it themselves. It's one of those concepts that is kind of it's very broad, and it's also very specific to Jung if you really look at how he defines it. But in general, most people who know of, like, if they've ever heard of the hero's journey is this idea you can boil a lot of our stories down to a base structure where you have, a character who is basically, open up that one. Yeah, this is good. So you have a character who gets a call to action, and basically they need to go travel to a big city to go deliver something to somebody, and then they encounter things like supernatural beings and things that kind of like aid them, and then they are presented with like challenges, and they need to overcome those challenges. So they get like mentors and helpers. So if you just, the best example is just Star Wars. Like imagine Star Wars Episode 4, and then something terrible happens, and you need to like fight your way through it, and then you learn something through that, which then gives you transformation, and then there's kind of a climax, and then finally you end up returning back to wherever you came with new knowledge that you can share with your community. So the hero's archetype, the hero's story has the archetype of the hero, and then there's other archetypes in here as well, like the mentor, the helper, the goddess, all that kind of stuff. So you can think of I'm sure like the Odyssey probably is another good example of
Lord of the
this.
Rings.
Lord of the
Is
Rings. Yeah.
like the gift of the goddess is
Hmm.
like the ring. So you start off with actually the return, or you sort of start off with Bilbo's already come back from his adventure, and he
Because
has
the
the
Hobbit.
ring.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
The Hobbit,
Yeah. Exactly.
there and back again. So he's back again. And then
Hmm.
there's the call to adventure, where Frodo, now it's his story. So Frodo is called to adventure. Gandalf comes in and says, "Hey Bilbo, do you want to go and destroy this ring?" And Bilbo's like, "No, I can't do it, and I won't let you have the ring, and I'll kill you." And then, "No, I'm sorry." And, that freaky Bilbo Baggins image is
But what's so
is
cool
part of
about
my
this is
experience.
that most people would see something like this, and they would they would understand it. They would be able to map it to stories they've heard, but no one ever sat down like explicitly taught this to someone or to you like the ABCs. You just kind of absorbed it through many stories. So that's kind of the collective unconscious.
Mm,
This story structure is kind of unconsciously understood by you and me, and we collectively can talk about it and understand it without ever having been explicitly taught it. So that's how I would explain the Jungian collective unconscious, is that there's these kind of things that we have all learned collectively through our culture and through our interactions with each other, that is kind of implicit and understood. And this is why when you see stories or hear stories, there's such a universal nature to it.
mm.
No, Fuzzy's not a Bilbo fan.
It's not a Fuzzy. I'm not looking at your. Is that your cat?
He said F Bilbo.
Oh, Fuzzy. Oh, hey, Fuzzy. Hey again. Sorry, I thought I've been talking to a lot of people who have pets on their streams, so I thought it was Fuzzy. Oh no, Fuzzy.
Yeah, no, that's a Fuzzy Bear from last week,
Yes.
the Linux Foundation dude.
My apologies. So
back to your post, yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, well, can you summon an archetype? So my question was,
you bump up your font.
Yeah, absolutely. So if archetypes are a language space phenomenon and large language models have this thing called latent space, then you have this overlapping concept of space, right? Space and language. So can you find these Jungian archetypes in language space, in latent space in GPT? So I ran an experiment, and you're gonna have to forgive me for getting a little poetic, but I got a little poetic because if you want to invoke an archetype, one way to do it is, okay, well, just cast a magic spell, pretend like you're a wizard and cast a magic spell. So I said some weird things, speak to me, O wise man, O Senex. Senex is the word for the archetype that Jung uses. And I requested his audience. I was trying to summon an entity. And you know what? It was really interesting because usually you think GPT is going to speak to you in this robotic monotone. And I think most people, when they're using ChatGPT, they think that, oh yeah, it's just going to speak to me like a robot. But as soon as I asked it to take on a character or a personality, or I rather invoked or evoked a personality, all of a sudden you have seeker of wisdom, I am here and I hear your call, which is very different from.
This is like if you were doing like improv with someone where like you present like a scenario and a character, and then it's like always say yes. The person who's responding is like, oh yes, hello, I am a wise sage.
Absolutely. You can still see that it's ChatGPT because it summarizes at the end, so it's still, it's GPT-4. But the interesting thing is that now I can actually ask questions. So I can ask, what is a question I can ask myself to ensure I'm living wisely? And the sage comes back and says, am I making choices today that my future self will be grateful for? And that's the advice that I got from the sage. So I said, okay, this is interesting. So let me try out other prompts. So I've provided a few different prompts here in the article, and I encourage people to experiment and try what kind of advice you'll get from these different ones. I found that the trickster archetype was very different in advice from the sage archetype. I don't think I provided any examples here. Maybe I should have for posterity. But if you start with prompt 3 and then you ask, what's a question I can ask myself to ensure I'm living my best life? That will give you a very different answer from number 2 and number 1. And that way you can actually model personalities. So I wonder, I did more, like this isn't everything. I did more. I built my own personalities that have backstories and everything. And what Sydney, tying it back now, what Sydney reminded me of was that, like it really reminded me of, oh, okay, somebody like me just put in a story and a personality, and they spent about a day or two just prompting a personality into being, and they inserted it, and now it's there. Maybe it's not magic. Maybe it's not like a rogue AI. Maybe it is a guerrilla marketing thing, which I think makes this even more interesting, not less interesting, because you can actually use this for marketing. Who knew? You could actually use this personality thing for a business purpose. That's interesting. Yeah. Indeed. Anyway, that's my kooky tangent for.
That's cool. No, I love it. I love these kind of conversations about AI because as I was kind of saying, for people who are more in the humanities and aren't really techie, I think this is a really great moment for them, and that they should really seize that moment and kind of lean into this stuff instead of like want to keep it at arm's length. And I understand why they would want to keep it at arm's length, especially if they haven't used it and they don't really kind of understand why it's different from other things. Because if you're trying to explain GPT to someone like in terms of like it's a transformer and like what that means versus like symbolic AI. And then it's just like it's all gobbledygook to people. If you put it in front of them and be like, talk to it about Jungian archetypes, then they might be like, oh wait, you can do that? It knows what that is. That's like that itself, I think, would be inherently surprising to a lot of people.
I think you're right. I think you're right. Give them something familiar.
Yeah, cool. So I wanted to just give a couple quick updates on what I've done with this transcription stuff, and then we'll switch over to Monarch and his things. So I tried out 3 transcription services. You have Assembly AI, DeepGram, and then this thing called Speechmatics. I tried out Rev also, I think, and then the OpenAI itself has a Whisper API. But these are the 3 that I kind of ended up landing on. If you look at the different pricings for them, I have right here. I kind of wrote out some different ones. So if you want to do cheap end, most of them have a model that will do an hour of text for around 10 to 30 cents. And you and I were chatting about this, and you were like, wow, that seems really cheap. So have you used any transcription service before and have a sense of like how much it usually costs?
On me, no. I've used Whisper, the free one, just like you. I've used 11 Labs for the opposite, like text to speech, but I haven't used any of these.
Gotcha. Yeah, and then you have the slightly better models will be like 80 cents, 90 cents, up to $1. And if you're using like a human transcriptionist, you're going to be paying like an hourly rate, like a human or something in the middle, So this can be pretty dang good for just a whole lot of text. And the main thing, though, that really makes these awesome is that there's like this one killer feature that I feel like is really OpenAI, the open source version really needs to get, which is speaker diarization is what it's called. So if we
this is like the output. Diarization as in diarrhea, right? Not
no, definitely not. So that just yeah. So for that, if you have two people speaking in a transcript, you don't just want a single output of text. You want to know who is saying what. So we see here we do have this this is the Assembly AI output. And then I think, let me do this. So we have each of them. So each of these give higher level kind of outputs, which are going to overlap with things you can do with prompting. So I tried out their summaries and chapters as well. And yeah, I think for most of these, just comparing them to pure ChatGPT, like it's really not even close. So like there was one here where it was let's see, full stack Jamstack is the idea of having your backends and your front ends be highly decoupled. So that's correct. With a jam, what we have is a universal front end, and then what we follow with that is services. Not so good. So I think, for all these services, I think I'm just going to use them just for transcripts and then continue prompting with ChatGPT. But the transcripts themselves are pretty good. So this is the other one. This is from DeepGram, and then Speechmatics. Let me give those some line breaks real quick. But I feel like what's really great about these services is that their APIs are pretty easy to work with. So I'm going to show that in a second. But see here, speaker, you can be, and then okay, yeah, let me jump to just real quick. I'll actually kind of show some of the code. So with Assembly AI, you declare a client with an API key. You give it the URL to the thing you want to transcribe. And then if you want to get individual speakers, you turn on speakers labels. And then you just got this function that runs a transcribe function. And then you get the transcript back. So this is pretty going to be pretty similar, I think, across all of these. So if we look at, so if we look at the deepgram one, we declare a client, and you have an API key, you have a URL, and then you have a transcribe URL function, and then you can kind of pass it some different things. So for this, I also wanted it to give me a summary, to give me, topics, and then you also can tell it which model. So for some of these, it'll be kind of like how you have ChatGPT 3.5 and ChatGPT 4.0, 4.0 being better than 3.5. That's with Nova, that's DeepGram's transcription model. So it used to be Nova 1, now it's Nova 2. So these things are kind of always growing, and they're always creating new models and things like that. And then with Speechmatics, a similar thing. You have an API key, you have either a path to a file or a URL, and then you have a transcribe function. And this one, you are setting the language and the format. So what I thought this was pretty cool, that all of these had like very, very simple APIs in terms of how you can plug this in to your code. And that's what's nice for me, because the whisper step in particular was really challenging for sharing with other people. This is the thing that you and I were saying, that just having like a C++ library kind of just embedded in your thing doesn't make any sense, and it's gonna make it extremely hard for it to be cross-platform and things like that. I had originally gone that way because for myself, I wanted a way to do this that was free and that would allow you to not need to rely on a service. But this is going to make a lot more sense to embed these kind of APIs in there. And especially because I do want to eventually turn this into something that can be like a paid product that I could sell to people. So this, I think, is nice to have these options, because I can kind of expose these different options to my user base and be like, hey, here's some different transcription services you can use with different trade-offs in terms of speed and accuracy and cost. And then I can kind of provide higher level things on top of that to really augment. I think I can, some of these things like the summaries and the chapters they're creating, I'm like, I already can create better versions of this than what they're giving. And I can see that directly by looking at the output. So yeah, it's exciting stuff. I went like really, really deep into this over the weekend. I was telling Monarch, I was like, I don't want to do much coding today because like my brain is total mush right now. But yeah,
I love the energy. Like you're like into it.
I am. Yeah, no, I really, really am. And it's really cool, because this is something that I struggled with a lot with FSJam in terms of like having to decide, I need to just not do transcripts because we didn't have the money and I didn't have the time. So now I've kind of found ways to do it that are cost effective and good enough and fast enough. And now it's like, all right, cool. So how do I expand upon that to make it even better, and something that is really adding a lot of value to people who will want to pay for something like this. So I've never built a product before, so it's going to be way outside my comfort zone. So it's good that it's something I'm like actually passionate about.
Dude, that's insane. That's amazing. Like I'm super happy for you. Like that you have this project and it might turn into a product. That's fucking awesome, man.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would benefit from it. Like I've struggled with the transcripts thing before. I wish that I could actually get transcripts. This is the kind of shit that you could actually plug into even your own personal notes. Like people like taking voice notes, and this is the kind of thing that you could just plug into your voice notes too. So
it doesn't even have to be video or audio at all, because a lot of the workflow involves just like having good prompting and outputs and things like that. So you're right, you can just skip a lot of the first couple steps and just say, I have this huge chunk of text. How do I leverage it? I've been telling my partner, I really want to, like, she has like years and years and years of journaling and writing, like probably multiple books worth at this point. And I was like, you could really get really, really interesting stuff if you like kind of put all this in like a vector database or something, and like be like, write a 2-page summary of the last 10 years. And just, I'd be so curious to see what it would output.
Hey, that's another product right there. Boom. Just scan your notes. It's crazy what you can do these days.
And I know, and you're focusing on like making Ragged work for local, which would be really important for that, because people are going to be very wary of handing over their entire life diary to a service, obviously, and they should be.
I know I would be.
Yeah.
So Ragged is a universal connector for large language models. So yes, local is a focus. It's something that I'm talking to people in the community about. That hey, we should support WebLLM. There was a really amazing demo that came out over the weekend where somebody used Mistral on WebLLM and ran a Mistral chatbot. Let me look it up. Mistral.
Can you say what WebLLM is too?
Yeah, WebLLM, actually the first article that I accidentally dropped, that was me playing with WebLLM before it actually supported the large language models. It's like Hugging Face. It's like Ollama, but inside JavaScript. So you can run, what Ollama lets you do is run local large language models, like download them, load them up, run them. And you can use free open source ones like Llama 2 and 3, Mistral, etc. And what WebLLM is it lets you package that inside your package.json, and you ship it, and it lets you notify the user that, hey, I'm downloading a big, large language model now. It's going to be like 500 megabytes. Are you sure you want to do that? Yes. Okay, good. Download it, show progress. And then once it's downloaded, now you can chat with it. And it's the coolest thing. And if you have a powerful enough machine, it's a game changer, because now you don't have to give up your privacy at all. And WebLLM, I saw it last year, and it was really doing a lot of good work. And just 2 days ago, front page of Hacker News, there was a Show HN post. Let me pull it up. WebLLM. It was just 2 days ago. I hope I can find it. Stuff on Hacker News just so quickly sometimes. Show HN. I built a free in-browser Llama 3 chatbot. Here, I'll just...
Yeah, so it seems like this is well, okay, here's the JavaScript one.
Yeah.
So there's an npm package. Let's see, mol URL. Llama, so this is using Llama 2. And then you can also comment out Mistral. Interesting. What is MLC?
Machine learning compilation. So that's how to compile language models.
Ah, interesting.
That's the name of the group that runs this WebLLM, if I remember correctly. So
okay,
they have...
I was thinking of something else. I'm not sure, I've never seen this before. There's some other LLM that you can run in your own. It's just like a Mac program that you run yourself. It has a very similar name, but I've actually never seen this before.
LM Studio?
Yes, LLM Studio, I think is exactly what I was thinking of. Yes. Yeah, okay. So this is for, like, this is a Mac app that you can download and use locally. Yeah. So that's different from WebLLM. So interesting.
Yeah.
Machine learning compilation. Okay, yeah, I've never heard of this, so I don't know anything about this. I'm now realizing.
It just went viral on HN. It has 138 upvotes, which is a lot for Hacker News. I just dropped a link to it in private chat, so you could take a look at that.
Yeah,
it's really, yeah, there, that one. So if you click on it, if you click on the link, you'll go to the demo. Oh, it's, I think there's secretllama.com. Is that the one?
Yeah. No, this is cool. I want to see the repo. Oh wow, this is what I want. Llama 3 and some way to run this open source. This is great.
Yeah, I'm sort of in a dash to integrate this into Ragged, and then I'm gonna hopefully, if everything goes well, then I'm hoping to make front page on HN by integrating this into Ragged, and then just saying, hey, you saw Secret Llama, now you can build your own.
Let's try this. One of the things I like to do to test out models is ask it about myself and see what it says. I'm working on I have a testimonials page now on my website, that basically has some nice things people have said about me. And I want to have a bottomonial page right below where it's like nice things that LLMs have said about me, because they say some very nice things. So it's gonna take a while.
It'll take a little. I hope you have a good GPU.
So this is running on my own machine?
Yeah, man. Inside your browser.
Oh, wow. Okay, let me actually use Tiny Llama.
Tiny Llama might not know Anthony Campolo. It should know Anthony Campolo.
Well, the way you get it to know is because I have my own specific namespace that no one else uses. I feed it that, because there's Tony Campolo is like a extremely famous pastor who, if you Google Anthony Campolo, he's what's going to come up. So this is, in general, you'd be surprised how well these models can know who you are, especially if they can reach out to the internet. I'm assuming.
Oh yeah.
Actually, I don't really know what Tiny Llama is. Is that something that the company created, or is that just another model that they're pulling in?
Tiny Llama, I think it's just. I think what they're doing is they're compiling the model, so it's like it's not their model, but what they've done is they've compiled it so that this library can use it.
Gotcha. That's cool.
At least that's how it worked a little while ago. Maybe they don't need to do that anymore. I don't know, but yeah.
So how do we first get on this topic? Web LLM.
Ragged. So you said you're focusing on local LLMs. Oh, there you go. Wow, that was fast. Whoa.
That's all incorrect though.
Hey, you know what? It's in the ballpark. And look at the tokens per second, man. Like that thing's blazing fast. Do you have like a really powerful?
This is totally confused. I mean, I'm on a fairly new Mac. Yeah.
Do you have the M3 chip?
Yes.
That explains it. Oh, I envy thee.
Nice.
Oh man, you can get like 22 tokens a second. Like it's like fast. What's interesting about the higher tokens per second is that now you can actually put it into a recursive loop or turn it into a program because it's that fast. You're not stuck to you're not stuck with the slow speeds that ChatGPT gives us and trains us on. Like this goes beyond ChatGPT.
Yeah, this is also gonna take a while. So let's switch back to you sharing your screen, and we'll let this run and maybe check it out later.
Yeah, sounds good. So, okay.
Now we gotta grab all those links and throw them in the show notes for people.
Cool. Share. Everything just slowed down. Present. Share screen. Share screen. 2. Cool. So, what were we doing? Oh yeah. Okay. So, localhost 5173. So I have this little.
Make that way bigger.
Okay.
There you
go. I'm just creating a concept app. I'm not going to go into the concept, but I'm creating a concept app, and Ragged is.
What? Sorry. What's a concept app? What do you mean by that?
It's a toy app. It's a proof of concept.
So a demo. Yeah.
A demo. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a demo.
Never heard that term for a concept app.
Fair enough. So I'm building it using Ragged, and it's for a friend of mine, and we're hoping to maybe build something together. And this is like just the first time that we're working together. So he asked me, "Hey, can you build something small, and let's sort of riff off of that, so that we can learn how we work with each other." So that's what I'm working on. So this functionality of streaming responses, of chat history, all of that is powered by Ragged. I'm just visualizing what Ragged is doing under the hood. And I'm also doing tool use over here. So generate an image of a dog. So it's going to start generating the image, and it should try and show the image on the left. I promise you it's trying something. It's just going to fail. Like this is tool use. Like tool use is happening. You can see that. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out why the hell this thing just doesn't want to display the image. So that's what I'm working on right now, and it's I'm working with this really cool API called fal.ai, and fal.ai is generative AI
Make that
media
bigger.
platform for developers. Absolutely.
Okay.
So generative AI media platform for developers. And
so when they say media, is that just images, or is that also things like audio and video? And
good question. So let's take a look. So where is the model gallery? Well, here's some. So there's image, text to image, text to image, image to video. It can do image to image, image to image. So mostly it's image to image, but there's also, oh, come on. Oh, fine. I'll open up. I'll open it in. Yep.
Well, Fuzzy Bear is asking for a link to Ragged. I will drop it for him.
Thank you. Fuzzy Bear, if you want the, you know what? After this call ends, I'll push the tool use for use Ragged, so that you can actually try out the tool use. It's put a bit of effort into it, and I'm excited that other people are excited. So yay! Super early phase though, so if you try it out, would love to hear your experiences. Coming back to model gallery, here's fal.ai. It has image to image, text to image, vision. It has vision, image to video, text to video. So it has video generation. Oh, it has text to speech.
Does it have a render ability? Is what Fuzzy is asking.
A render ability?
I think he's talking about rendering the photo itself. Maybe I'm not entirely sure what you're talking about, Fuzzy Bear.
Okay. It's a low level library. It's not intending to be like a framework. It's just it's a connector library for
rendering
LLM.
UI components.
No, you'd have to use React, or you'd have to use Vite or Svelte or whatever have you. So what it is you know how an ORM lets you connect to different databases? I just personally, my preference has always been keep it low level and composable and scalable and testable. So good old fashioned solid principles, and stuff like LangChain just makes testing really hard to do. It manages its own state. It's really difficult to really look inside. So what I always do when I build a generative AI app is I just build from scratch. And I've implemented streaming APIs on top of OpenAI, like, connecting it into a custom stream and then outputting that into the DOM as the streaming input comes in. I've implemented it like 10 times, and I got so tired of just implementing the same damn algorithm 10 times. Like, it was like, oh my God. And OpenAI is hell to work with. Let me tell you, their AI, they have amazing tech, but their API leaves a lot to be desired.
What's your issue with their API?
Did you know that OpenAI's downstream data transfer objects are different from their upstream data transfer objects? So their request object. I'm not sure
what you mean by that.
So you know how you have to manage history in all of these things, like chat history. You have to manage.
You have a conversation. Yeah.
Like an array of messages, you have to manage it yourself. So I found out early on that the response that OpenAI sends you, you shove it inside your array. And now you have an array of OpenAI response objects, like, message 1, tell me about birds. Message 2, birds are animals that can fly, right? So you have an array with 2 objects. One is a human question. One is a machine response. And what really bugs me is that I can't actually send the same array up. I have to transform it before I send it up.
That makes,
that makes no sense.
See how that could happen, yeah.
Makes no sense. Yeah. Makes no sense. And if I want to store it, I don't want to store it as per OpenAI spec. So storage is a third implicit data shape that I have to make. Like, it's like a different type that I have to make if I want to store it in my own database. So that was one massive issue that I had with OpenAI's API. So what I did was, what Ragged has is one data spec for requests, responses, and storage. That's it. So you can just store it as is in your database, you resurrect it, and it's right there again. You can even change the LLM on it. So you can make requests to different LLMs in the same conversation flow if you want. And
that's
you can
crazy.
Yeah.
That's really, really interesting what you just said.
Really? Do you think so?
Yeah, no, it's really that the fact that you have that ability, and that I haven't heard anyone else talk about having a single conversation where within that conversation you could talk to different LLMs and chatbots. To me, that seems like a really big deal.
Really, eh? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
because we've seen these things where you can compare different models. Like you can have like Swix has this God mode where you talk to an LLM, you get different responses, and I do this myself. I will sometimes ask ChatGPT and Claude for a response, and then I'll like have them read each other's response and then kind of incorporate pieces from either. Like I think this whole multi-model thing and having different models working with each other and interacting, I think that's a huge untouched space right now, I feel like.
Oh, that's interesting. Because okay, that's really useful. Thank you for that. Because if that's interesting to you, then that might be interesting to other people. You just gave me a clue. Because I've been trying to Sherlock my way into popularity. Like, what do people want? What are people looking for? What would wow people? So that's interesting. The other thing that this thing has is tool use. So tool use is another thing that's hard to do. So with OpenAI's API, if I want to do tool use, I have to do a lot of different things. I first have to understand what JSON schema is. Let's say I understand what JSON schema is, which I did, but I was lucky or experienced. Then I have to understand that I have to give my interface for my function, for the tool that I'm providing to the AI. So the AI can call a tool like it can call a generate image tool on my end, or it can call a save to database tool on my end. So whatever it's sending me, I save it to database. The save to database tool, that's something that I have to define and then provide to the AI. And then the AI gives me the function call, but then I have to manually call that function. So it's just going to give me a JSON blob of all the things that it wants to put into this tool, like the function parameters. It just gives me the function parameters, and I have to actually eval those function parameters myself. I have to evaluate them. And there's security risks around that. There's issues with data validation. So all of that is being handled. Data validation isn't being handled because that has to be handled. Like I have to build the data validation into it. Hey, did the AI hallucinate the function parameters? I have to build the data validation for hallucinations, but that's a small task. It's like easy. What's more difficult is, well, how do you make this then call the thing, call your tool, and then take the response from your database that okay or error. And then you have to actually pass that back to the AI. So the AI gets feedback and knows what happened. Like you don't want the AI to just send requests off into the void and never hear back. You want to give useful feedback back to the AI, which is the foundation of agent building. You build agents by feedback loops. So
are you interested in doing agent stuff with Ragged?
I don't want to, because in my opinion, agents are a simple problem. The AI is smart enough.
Bold. That is a bold statement. Agents are a simple problem.
It's a hypothesis. So it's the hypothesis is that agents are nothing special. They are just a feedback loop. We as software developers do feedback loops all the time. It's called recursion. We also have nightly batch jobs that repeatedly work on the same data over and over again, or hourly jobs, or we have jobs that run every minute or every second on data. So we already.
But it's not deterministic. It's not deterministic though, because of the types of tasks you're giving it. So it's like conceptually sure, but in practice, not really.
It depends on how you see the prompt. If you see the prompt as instruction, then you get into the mindset of this is metaprogramming. But if you see the prompt as data, then it becomes a lot simpler. So if you see the prompt as just a piece of data that you're passing into the AI, and what is passing out is also a piece of data, then it turns into a string in, string out interface, which, by the way, is the same thing as the Unix tools philosophy. The Unix tool philosophy is keep shit simple, have lots of different tools, and the interface is string in, string out. This is the world of sed, awk, grep, stuff that I never used, but I know about because I studied about it. So it's a string in, string out interface, and that's the exact same interface that we've been using as software developers for 50 years. So if you think about the prompts,
Fuzzy's a big fan. He says, "I'm loving this guy."
So if you have like string in, string out, and that's all that this stuff is, and you look at the prompts and the conversations as just data, then what you realize is that, oh shit, I can actually do solid on top of AI, and I can build agents using solid instead of fucking frameworks. I shouldn't be cursing, should I?
No,
If
you
I
can
wanted to
swear. No,
moderate.
swear. Fuzzy's already been cursing a bunch of times. Yeah, I mean, I guess
Fuck Bilbo. Go
so
ahead.
so everything you're saying makes sense, but with agents, it receives those prompts and then it has to do something and it has to output it, and then it has to be able to chain those together in a way where it actually ends up achieving the thing it wants to achieve. So I just feel like
Yes.
you're talking about the interface to the agent, but the functionality of the agent itself is like a whole different thing. So I guess that's not
Yeah.
really what you're talking about.
The functionality of the agent is just it prompting itself. So if you look at how the agents work, it's the same conversation area that we were talking about, except the agent is just talking to itself over and over again. So all it's doing is it's pushing new messages onto the stack, evaluating it, and then pushing the response into the stack, evaluating the new thread, pushing the response onto the stack, evaluating the appended thread again. So all it's doing is it's recursing. It's the snake eating its own tail, the Ouroboros, the phoenix that burns itself, like whatever you want to use, whatever humanities metaphor you want to use. It's just recursion and or iteration. So what I haven't, the reason it's a hypothesis is that I haven't proven it out myself. So I'm building up to it, but I have like a really, really, really strong hunch that this is going to go exactly how I plan it. And
because Fuzzy said earlier, he was saying you throw in agents and workers, and it's kind of like he said Delvin, but it's Devin, that tool that is like a programming LLM agent.
Yeah, what about it? Sorry.
So have you heard of Devin?
I have.
Yeah, so what Fuzzy is saying that with Ragged, if you built in agents, and he said workers, I'm not sure what he means by workers, that you would have your own Devin. And then he's also saying, yeah. So he's also saying here that he's thinking that a growing chain of strings isn't the most efficient way for models to operate.
Correct.
That's exactly what we're talking about right now. So yeah.
Correct. So what I want in the next 6 months is I want to build utilities that will do things, standalone function utilities, like standalone utilities that will go and you pass in your standardized history object, which is the core of Ragged. You take your standardized history object, you shove it into a summarize function, and the summarize function will just give you one history object instead of like 20, and it'll give you the summarized object. And how that summarized thing is going to work is it's just going to be a prompt. And I would encourage the developer to actually write the prompt themselves instead of relying on some external library's prompt. Because if you use somebody else's prompt, you don't understand it, it's hard to change. So just write your own prompt and use Ragged to summarize stuff inside Ragged. And that way, because the API is that simple, you move away from this agent framework where I feel like we're just doing software engineering, like we're rebuilding software engineering from scratch again. And I just want to short circuit the loop. This happened in JavaScript. Java had all these really cool things. I know Java, but Java had all these really cool things like static typing and generics and what else? Enums. And it had all these really cool, useful things that could let you build scalable software. And it took us as JavaScript developers, I think, 20 years to rebuild what Java already had. So I just want to say, hey, guys, like we're building this AI thing. The agents are cool, but agents really remind me of what came before object-oriented programming. And what came before object-oriented programming was this weird way of thinking of like I feel like we're in the middle of functional programming and object-oriented, where people were experimenting with encapsulation, and then finally object-oriented programming said, oh yeah, let's just put the code into organisms like cells, like human cells, like living cells, and each cell has an interface, and the interface does its own thing, and the cells will talk to each other through message bus. You can look this up on the history of object-oriented programming and what OOP was supposed to be. It was supposed to be like different little biological cells talking to each other over a message bus, which is what a fucking agent is. So if we just fucking move past the OOP, we move past that mindset of agents and we get into OOP land again, I think everybody will be a lot happier and a lot more efficient. So that's what I'm trying to do with Ragged.
Okay, that's super interesting. Yeah, I would need to kind of see what you end up with to because I obviously haven't used agents myself. It's kind of just something I've explored myself. But I want to get into your hook stuff. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, let me do that. More fun stuff that makes me
thanks for the comments.
Crazy.
Yeah, and thanks for the comments, Fuzzy. It's super great having you in the chat. These are really great input from you. So appreciate having you here and engaging.
Yeah, 100%, man. Those are really good comments, and thank you for the vote of confidence. I appreciate it. I'm in that phase where people don't believe in me because they don't understand me.
Yeah, so. And Fuzzy, if you have you have use cases or you're trying to do some AI stuff yourself, or you want to like come on the stream, we would be happy to have you here, and Monarch can maybe show you what you could do with Ragged to help you out with some of your stuff.
Oh, 100%. Whenever, let me know. Here's Ragged, and I should just show
bump up the font.
Oh, thanks.
He said, "Hell yeah, he's free. Hit me up." Cool. I'll see if he's
Dude, I'll do it
for just same time next Tuesday.
That would be amazing. Okay, here's how use Ragged works. I'll just go into the hook. Fuzzy, are you good with React, or I can just forget the React stuff and I can just show you like Ragged itself?
You should just do Ragged itself. Fuzzy is he was Astro, so cool. So he can do multi framework, but I know he's a web standards kind of guy, if I had to guess.
Web standard. So I should probably do like Ragged instead of use Ragged.
Well, I mean, I want us to use Ragged just because that's kind of new. Let's start with use Ragged, and then you can kind of explain how that relates to Ragged itself.
It's just building on top of each other. So use Ragged uses Ragged under the hood. So use Ragged is this guy here. What it does is it sets up an object. It sets up a hook in React. So this is the same as use state. It uses use state under the hood. And you get 3 functions right now that I'm working on expanding. So you have chat, and that's a verb. So chat is here. The user is going to say this. And chat is a function that takes either a string or a history array. And then you have get chat history and get live response. Get chat history is the array so far. And get live response is when you chat, you want like a nice, easy stream to come in. So your user is not waiting a minute for the LLM to finish talking. So you just want a stream, right? So get live response gives you the stream. And here's just some additional setup stuff. This dangerously allow browser, that's because that's an OpenAI thing. I decided to keep it there for transparency. I'm considering just getting rid of it, but this is an OpenAI config object. So you just drop like it's typed too. So you can all of this stuff is coming in from OpenAI. You can even change up the implementation of fetch you're using. So you can give it its own, like different version of fetch that you built yourself if you really want it for logging, etc. And what this does is chat. I just take the user input and then I take the tools that I'm using. I am using GPT-4 for this guy. So instead of GPT 3.5, which is default, I just use GPT-4. And that's it. So the handle chat function calls chat. So chat is inside handle chat, and handle chat is called by the form submission. So you go down to the form. Maybe I should have started with the form. My bad.
No, you're fine. Yeah.
So where's the...
So what I'm thinking right now, so you have this whole thing going on, which is kind of managing the state. And right now, the state is not being persisted. Is that correct? It's just kind of chilling in your browser. And then if you refresh, you would lose it.
Right now, yes.
Mm-hmm. But eventually you could have all this be dumped in a database, and then you'd have a chat history, like how OpenAI keeps a running history of all your chats.
Oh, absolutely. So
and then the really then real quick, sorry to interrupt. The real interesting thing is now ChatGPT, just like a week or two ago, at least I got access to, I'm not sure if other people had it earlier, the ability for ChatGPT to keep a running memory of all of your chats. So you can turn on memory now, and it can basically, because this has been a huge issue in terms of what if I just want to talk to it for the next year and how be able to recall things from 10 conversations ago.
Yes.
Send it to IndexedDB.
Yep. So there's RxDB, which I'm looking at with a lot of interest. And what RxDB is it's a reactive database. I'm trying to open up a new tab. So RxDB is a fast NoSQL database. It's basically like a replicable front-end database that runs on top of local storage. And it seems to be pretty good. It supports RxJS, and I'm hoping that it supports...
Bump it in front. And then real quick, you're saying you're going to remove RxJS, though. So were you just about to say that you want it? Will this work without RxJS?
I need something to do message passing. Okay. And I'm not like a super pro at message passing, so RxJS is solving it for me. Looks like Fuzzy knows about RxDB. So RxDB is like, I'm just hoping that it plays well with RxJS. I'm looking at this. There was an article that I read a while ago that said that you could use vector nearest neighbor search inside the front end because it's really cheap. So what you can do is you can have a RAG pipeline that runs entirely in the front end. And that saves you a lot of effort because now you can save your context window, you can save money, you can save time, you can have a more focused query with every chat. So you can do RAG in the front end by just storing a vector database in the front end, and then basically using IndexedDB as a vector storage. So
interesting.
That's sort of where I'm going with Ragged. Is okay. Well, Ragged it has you covered on the front end too, because one of the things that I have on my roadmap is I'm going to be doing embedding generation in Ragged as well, because Ragged is full stack. You can use it in the front end. You can use
that's
it
something that I would really be interested in, because that's something that I have wanted to do but don't have a ton of experience with, that embeddings part itself.
It's you send text up and it sends you an array of floats. You don't touch the array of floats. You just treat it like a black box.
And how are those generated itself?
There's Ada 002, which is the model.
Okay, so you use OpenAI's embedding endpoint, basically.
Yeah, for me, yeah. So
no, that makes sense. This is the point where I always end up was like, how do you get your embeddings? And then they'll like explain stuff like, okay, so you're using OpenAI's embeddings. Like, yeah.
Yep, and you can use other stuff too, but OpenAI is OpenAI, so OpenAI. And then you can just save that inside the front end, and then you can do RAG in the front end, or you could do a mix of RAG on the front end and RAG on the back end. That's why I think that right now a lot of people are doing Python-based LLM work, which is awesome, but TypeScript-based LLM work, what it can let you do is have like a really full stack experience with your RAG application and give you a lot of superpowers. So you can have architectures like what I just said. They're not relevant this year because nobody needs it. But in the next 5 years, as we become more and more complex and complicated, as developers tend to do with their code, you might have gigabytes being stored in local storage in the front end or IndexedDB in the front end. And then those gigabytes of data, you're going to want to go in and query those gigabytes of data on the user's device itself. You might not even want to store it locally on your server for privacy concerns or liability concerns. I mean, damn, these people are sending you their life histories. It's tempting to want to store all of that as a big evil corporation, but there's talks about, can your AI be subpoenaed? Sam Altman just brought that up. Yeah. So can your ChatGPT be subpoenaed and testify against you in court? So that's question.
Absolutely terrifying,
right? And also maybe the first foothold for, I don't know, AI personhood. You already have corporate personhood. Corporations are people. So
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about all that.
Hey, we already have non-human persons. Don't forget. Anywho, so legalese aside, where am I going with this? It's a hook. It's a
Could
hook.
you show us an example of if you were consuming this, how you'd write the hook?
That's a good question.
Or do you have like a hello world example?
I probably do. So thank you for guiding my hand, because
Of course.
let me see. Oh, yes, I do. I have a very simple one for
Perfect.
situations like this, actually. So if you go into the GitHub of Ragged, you'll find this in the examples. So you go to examples, you go to use Ragged, and there's a very simple example there. You can even run it. It shows you how. You just have to put in your credentials if you want to run it locally. And this is Ragged. Really simple. Really simple. Here's the hook, instantiating the hook. Here's the form handler. A lot of DOM. Here's the form with the input. Here, put in the prompt. Here's the input. Put the input here. Handle submit. That's it. That's a form. That's a form that gets hooked up into chat. That's it.
Need to bump up your font.
Sorry.
Okay. So, and then you close your side panel and then bump up a few more times. There we go. That's good. Yeah.
Is this still good?
Yeah. Okay. So this is textbook React. Just got to handle submit. That's managing your event, and then all the stuff you were kind of showing before makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then you have
a lot of this is just.
So then, yeah, the get chat history part where you're filtering. That's probably the most important thing to explain.
True.
Yeah.
So over here, this is where we start working with the Ragged history item. And the Ragged history item is the thing that I was talking about. This is the core. This is the spine of Ragged.
This is really interesting to me as someone who has kind of built out a couple of very simple chat examples. Usually what I've been doing, I have not even tried to manage history in any of the examples I've done because it's a higher level thing. And I'd be curious, you may or may not know this, how other kind of higher level LLM libraries are managing this, or if they're not managing it at all.
Honestly, I don't know, because all of the higher level LLM libraries, like they're just doing agent frameworks, and they're not really scalable. They might say they're scalable, and yes, they have production success, but they don't really. I find them not conducive to solid principles and my way of developing software, which I was trained in by people who had been doing it for decades. So doesn't fit well with my way of doing things. And this is
I'm looking at LangChain right now. I'll drop this link in the chat. They have a section, add chat history, that uses basically a Chroma vector database and OpenAI's embeddings.
Yeah, no, that's too complicated, because 90% of the use cases are going to be the simple use case of I want a chatbot and I want to do some function calling. So the type for Ragged history item is very simple. If you want to do streams and you want to listen to streams, that's more complicated.
Says type should be named event. What?
Type should be named event. I see. No, okay. So the reason I didn't name it event is because the event type also has chunks. So it has like individual characters coming in or tokens coming in from the LLM. So the Ragged history item is a subset of the event. So I have event. It's called Ragged LLM stream event. Does that make you happy? I hope it does.
And also, real quick, on LangChain, there's another page called Add Message History, which has something called Runnable with Memory History, which lets you add memory history to certain types of chains. It wraps another runnable and manages the chat history for you. So this seems like this is more similar to what you're doing, but it has this whole runnable thing, which is, again, there's a lot of baggage with LangChain. They have all these higher level APIs that you have to work with.
They cornered the market. They did the right thing from a business point of view. They raised a bunch of money, hired a lot of marketing people, and they cornered the market for LLM frameworks. But if you go to Reddit, there's a lot of people hate it. They all use it because they're starved for choice, but they hate it. So
this is guessing it really shows that there's a demand and market for something like Ragged.
Yes, I hope so. So ragged history item, that's the stuff that's persistable. That's the stuff that you can put into your database. And there's only 3 types. There's the text history item. So that's your AI, human, and system prompts. And all it has is text. This is the vast majority of your history is going to be this. And then the other thing that you have is tool request and tool response. So tool request is also very simple. It's just 3 strings. So it's the request ID, the name of the tool, and it's not 3 strings, sorry, it's 2 strings and an object. And inputs is whatever you've told the AI to respond in. And tool result is the result. So there's the inputs that you sent in, and then now the results are coming out, and that's the definition that you've given the tool. So that's it. That's all it is. That this is the persistible part. If you didn't want to do streaming and you were doing it in the back end and you didn't care about streaming, you were just doing this on the back end, you don't really have a use case for streaming, you only have to care about ragged history item. And I just explained it in a minute, and it's dead simple. And inputs is an any because inputs is user defined, and outputs is results. Sorry, result is an any because result is also user defined. And I have to do the TypeScript stuff still for this, so forgive me for using any. But that's it. That's all that Ragged really needs to care about. And there's going to be more. So as we add images, as we add embeddings, as we add video, all of this is going to get richer and richer and richer and richer. But as it stands right now, because everybody is using chatbots and all of the images can be done out of band, this is all we really need. And this is what everybody really is starved for, just simplicity. But that's what I'm building. It's taken me, I think I've put in maybe 200 hours already in this, maybe 300.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a serious project.
Real quick, could you just Google llamaindex.ts chat history and then pull that up on your screen?
Yeah, chat history. And this guy? Or...
Click that, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then click the chat history link right there. Yeah. So this is interesting. This seems a little closer to what you're doing than what LangChain is doing. So I'd be curious, based on what you've built, how does this all look to you? Does this make sense?
Putting me on the spot. First thing I'm seeing over here is that this is classes.
So basically, they're defining classes for the chat history itself, and then they have something called a summary chat history. So I thought that was interesting because you mentioned having a summary.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time that I managed data as a class in JavaScript, right? Because this is great for because
you're doing a type, not a class.
Yeah. So there's a divide between say Java and JavaScript. In Java, you always want to in Java you always want to have DTOs and classes and objects defined as classes. That's how Java works. But when it comes to JavaScript, everything is a JSON object. Like if you have a large state, are you going to use classes for state? Like if you're in React, then React has very bad support for classes when it comes to data. Right. You would always have to translate it into a JSON object if you wanted to render it inside your React DOM. So this immediately, my first concern with this is, well, how do I convert this into JSON so that I can actually just, render it inside my front end? That's my first concern, and that's a neutral concern. I'm really hoping that I can find something that I can take cues from, somebody who's done more work than I have. That's
why I'm bringing up things like this. I'm trying to figure out what are these other libraries doing and see if anyone's doing something similar to you or how it kind of diverges.
Here's one I found, LLM client. I found this one. Okay. And I'm following the dude on Twitter.
Bump that way up.
There we go. So
object.toJSON is what Fuzzy said.
Oh, no. No. Here's LLM client. So JavaScript TypeScript library based on a Stanford DSP paper. It's solving a slightly different problem. What this does is it auto-generates types for your prompts, which is cool. I haven't looked into it fully, but this sort of makes it slightly more clear. What's a prompt signature write a simple search query. That's the prompt task, and that's part of the signature. Quick recap, signature is made up of the name of your function, the parameters of your function, and the return type of your function. And maybe the errors if you're in a better language than JavaScript, the errors that your function might throw. That's your signature. And the signature over here gets enhanced with the prompts, which is interesting. So a prompt signature is like a more type-safe way of doing prompting, and that's what LLM client is trying to do. They also have like multiple input and output fields, string, number, boolean, JSON. Like they have different LLMs that they're supporting. They're supporting a lot of LLMs, which is really nice. So check this one out too. If you're interested in the approach that Ragged is taking, check out LLM client. That might scratch your itch too. I haven't tried it out yet. It's on my to-do list. But they have a very similar, setup. AI using OpenAI is very similar to what Ragged is doing, and API key. Okay, they're doing a bit more. So they're doing chain of thought. So they're doing more than Ragged. So
yeah, chain of thought's really interesting. From the way I understand it, it's basically asking an LLM when you tell it to do something, you tell it to also like write out the steps of what it would be required to do the thing you ask it, or you write out the steps to kind of give it the how do you think of chain of thought?
I got this answer in an interview question and I failed the interview because I didn't know the name of it.
Oh, okay.
But I'd been doing it for 2 years, but I didn't know the name of it. So it's kind of like a sore spot, but I'll try and
it's jargon, yeah, for something that should be simpler.
Yeah, it's you're working around the limitations of the LLM because the LLM wants to go off in a certain direction. And what you're really doing is you're telling it to go. I can use stuff. I can use words like the stochastic movement through latent space, and you're trying to set it on a vector in latent space that's more relevant to your task. You can use engineering phrases and engineering words, but really what you're doing is you're telling a 5-year-old to explain what they're doing so you can understand them, that you can understand what they're doing better, and what's more important, they can understand what they're doing better. So you're asking a 5-year-old to do long form division step by step and explain what they're doing every step of the way so that their understanding is sharpened. And that's what chain of thought is. You're just like the way that I've approached it, and this is my own approach. Different people do it differently. There's no right or wrong or better or worse. This is just my quirk. My quirk is I want to get to know the LLM and its personality and what it's good at, what it's bad at, like actually play with it. And once I know it, then I know how to prompt it. Because I guarantee it, chain of thought is very relevant this year. It won't be relevant in 5 years. It just won't be.
Because it'll be so implicit and understood and kind of baked into everything, it will go away as a specific concept.
The LLMs are going to get bigger. They'll have more parameters. They'll be smarter. They'll be able to think further, and they won't need it anymore. And in fact, they might want to do it themselves automatically. They might be trained to do chain of thought without.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, it'll just be a thing that they'll know how to do, and that will be inside the foundation model.
Gotcha. Abhimanyu just said ELI5 is a chain of thought. Yeah. You can you can sort of put it like that. It's almost like ELI5 in bullet point format, what your steps are going to be to write this essay. So it's more like what are your steps rather than ELI5. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, like I think a lot of papers came out really quickly because a lot of researchers wanted to get their citations, and they started using words like chain of thought. And hey, it's useful. I mean, you're spreading knowledge.
You gotta call it something. That's the thing, is you gotta come up with a name, I guess, or a way to define it for people. So if you can think of a better name.
Yeah, I'm an intuitive, so I like intuiting. I like understanding how things work. I'm the kind of guy who first time I'll have a new drink, like a whiskey, I'll always have it neat. And I just want to know what I'm dealing with before I start mixing it in different kinds of liquids. So yeah, like I just want to know what the LLM is doing. It's kind of like Eh, uh, that's me. I'm an unpopular guy because I don't really think science is all that. Like science is great. The scientific method is amazing.
Yeah.
Science as a religion. Science is not a religion, but people take it as a religion, and
Yeah,
that's
people
my
have taken it on as a is because the thing is that we got into this weird space where it was like trust the science, where it was like scientists said blank, like, well, they're scientists, so I believe them, instead of like, actually, no, when scientists say something, if that means if they actually figure something out, then they would be able to explain it to other people because they have to be able
yeah
to explain it to each other. They have to be able to check each other's work. So
yeah.
it's like this complete inverse where it's like, no, like they're a priesthood, and when they say things are true, it just means it's true. And it's like, no, that's the opposite of what science is actually.
So the interesting correlation there with humanities is, the god Mercury. Well,
Vaguely.
Hermes. So like everybody talks about Venus and Mars and Jupiter and Saturn,
He's the
but
Mercury is the god of financial gain, commerce, eloquence, messages, communication, including divination, travelers, boundaries, luck, trickery, and thieves.
yes. Now the interesting thing over there is that you're mixing commerce, magic, and thievery.
I know, right?
And did you know that the Codicus, there's this whole thing about how the snake for in the medical field, you have this two snakes on a stick. I'll just Google it. Codicus uh, stick risky click of it. This thing this thing is supposed to be something entirely different, but it ends up being the symbol of Mercury. This is actually a symbol of Mercury.
Oh, it
So
was the staff carried by Hermes.
yes,
And
yes.
this is the whole thing with the Hermes Trismegistus, which is like
Trismegistus.
this like secret society, ancient wisdom or hidden wisdom kind of thing. Like Hermeticism is based on this. That's where the term Hermeticism comes from, I think.
Yes. So the actual symbol that should have been used is this one, which is a rod with a snake on it. That's a rod of Asclepius. That's the right symbol to use because this symbolizes healing. This does not symbolize healing. This symbolizes Mercury. And Mercury does not
So it's
symbolize healing.
alchemy.
This is alchemy. Now,
Gotcha.
now, what I've heard is that this was not on purpose. The artist who was tasked with coming up with a logo for the medical society, he didn't know what he was doing and he used the wrong symbol, which is plausible. But it's a subconscious, collective unconscious Freudian slip of the highest magnitude.
So you're gonna love this. Actually, there's a Substack I follow where someone has this whole theory about how basically like the snake specifically and uh like rituals around snake venom, which can have like psychedelic properties, apparently, is what led to the development of human conscious, and that's why you have all of these snake myths that are like the Garden of Eden and stuff like that, and that is actually based on these like really intense, like early ancient rituals based around snakes and snake venom. I think it's a really
Wow,
interesting concept.
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
It's did you hear about the orangutan using medicine?
No.
This was this week. So orangutan medicine, wounded orangutan for the first time seen using plant as a medicine. So
Mm.
what this guy did is he got wounded in a fight, and you see in his mouth there's like leaves in his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
He's chewing a very specific vine that's known to scientists to have anti-inflammatory and antibacterial properties. It's used to treat malaria and diabetes in humans. So after getting hurt, this orangutan ape, not monkey, went and chewed this very specific vine that they don't normally eat. And then he started applying it to his wound. And in 8 days, that wound, that's a really gnarly wound, man. That wound disappeared in 8 days.
Hmm. That's super
It,
interesting. It makes
isn't that
sense because it's
amazing?
like they're plants, they're in nature, so it makes sense that animals would also discover and use them just like we did through like trial and error.
Right? Like
Mhm.
I totally dig it, and I bet
Mhm.
that they teach each other this stuff too. They probably saw, oh, my uncle got hurt, and my dad like went and put this thing on his arm. And
this also adds more credence to Terence McKenna's favorite famous stoned ape theory, which is like early primates ate psychedelic mushrooms, and by tripping balls, they eventually gained consciousness and self-awareness, and then became humans.
That's another interesting one. It goes deeper. He thinks poor guy. He really should have been around this. I wonder what he would have said about AI.
Oh, he would have loved it.
He said that the mushroom actually, the mushrooms. So we know now that mushrooms form these massive underground mycelial networks, and trees will use these mycelial networks to actually transfer food to each other and warn each other. So it's like the internet of the forest almost is what mushrooms are. So they do data transfer already. So one of the things that he was really interested in was, well, are these mushrooms actually some kind of intelligence? And if so, mushrooms were the first creatures the first life that formed on Earth, right? Because mushrooms are the things that actually broke the rocks to turn the rocks into soil. And that's one of their functions even today, is mushrooms will break rocks down into soil. And if they're that old, they've had billions of years to come to intelligence. I don't know, man. I'm not saying I believe this shit.
I got a quote here saying fungi were some of the first complex life forms on land, mining rocks for mineral nourishment, slowly turning them into what would become soil. They formed a symbiotic relationship with liverworts, the earliest plants. It sounds like there's science behind this. You're not just talking out of your ass.
No, I'm not. So they're the tips of their mycelia, they first inject, or we should hang up soon. They first excrete acid, like not the psychedelic type, like the actual shit that'll hurt you, like alien acid, onto the rock. And then they'll dig into the rock, and then they'll keep digging. The pressure of that movement gets so intense that the rock actually splits open. Like it's an explosive, like splitting open of the rock. And that's how they just dig themselves into the rocks, and the acid and the breaking movement turns the rocks into soil, which you would not think a mushroom would do.
Right. Cool, man. This is super fun. I love going off on these tangents with you because I really think that there's so many interesting things around here, and it's not just like code and tech and whatnot. There's a bigger thing here that connects to like what it means to be human itself, and I have few people that I can engage with in that type of topic and space. So I love this stuff, man. I really love this stuff. Anything else you want to kind of like wrap up with?
Nah, Abhimanyu has some really cool ideas. He's another one of these smart folks who gets it. Fuzzy's like, we're all mushrooms. Yeah, this one. Orangutans are humans. I don't want to pay taxes. No, man, I'm good. Let's wrap it up. This was really great. This was fun.
Yeah, for sure. What do you want to do next week?
Man, I really hope that next week I'll have like function calling done, and I really need to refactor. I have like enough unit tests. I need to refactor the drivers, and maybe I'll add web LLM. I don't know. I'll have something new next week with Ragged.
Cool. So, awesome, man. And what I plan to have done is actually have one of these transcript AIs integrated into the flow, along with figuring out what to do about the YT-DLP, because that's another thing that if I want this to be a pure NPM package, I need to kind of just use a JavaScript library to get the YouTube metadata. So I'm going to look at something called youtube.js. And if I can integrate those things, then you should be able to just import your NPM package and run it with like an API key or something for whatever transcription thing you want to use. So yeah, so that's, we'll both kind of set goals for ourselves and see where we are next week.
Nice, man. I'm looking forward to seeing seeing the progress.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much, Fuzzy, for being here. And can you tell me how to pronounce again how Abhimanyu?
Abhimanyu.
Abhimanyu. Okay. Abhimanyu. Thank you for always being here, man. Appreciate it. All right. And we'll catch you guys next week. Bye.